So let's take a look at interviews as a research method. So interviews are a conversation between the researcher and the participant. They're a primary method conducted within a piece of research, and they vary depending on the type of interview being used. Now, some of the key concepts to do with interviews would be the style of questioning. So structured interviews will use standardized questions, which are the same question presented to all participants. These questions tend to be closed, where there's limited response for answers. Unstructured interviews are more likely to use open questions, where the researcher can say what they want and the respondent can give answers as well on any topic that comes to mind. Social desirability can be a problem within most interviews, because the participants will give answers or respond in a way that they feel is socially acceptable or what the researcher wants to hear. It can be influenced by the researcher's characteristics, so their age, their gender, their ethnicity, potentially causing the participants to change their responses, and interviewers will use an interview schedule of predetermined questions to allow them to complete interviews. This is more common in a structured interview. So let's start off with structured interviews. Now, structured interviews, as the name suggests, is the researcher has a strict list of questions and interview schedule to follow within their method. Now, this piece of research often provides quantitative and standardized data. It's generally seen as a reliable and representative method. Key examples will be Wilmot and Young, when they conducted telephone interviews as part of their studies on family life. And generally, as a method, it's very good for getting a higher response rate, which creates a larger sample and the possibility to be more representative as a source of data. The data is easy to analyze, easy to compare because of that standardized nature. It's quicker to conduct compared to unstructured interviews. However, it's not really suitable as a method for exploring sensitive issues due to the lack of rapport. It often is also seen as lacking validity and verstehen. Unstructured interviews are the direct opposite of this. So it's the researcher has complete flexibility of the questions. They pre-decide a topic, but they can talk about anything they want. As a method, it's generally qualitative and builds on rapport, full of validity and verstehen. Key examples would be Oakley with her study of Here to Maternity, and Dobash with violence against wives. Key features of the method is it's really good for validity and verstehen, exploring a topic, getting lots of insight and understanding because of that ability to build up rapport. That is also one of the things that makes it quite good for exploring sensitive topics and sensitive issues, such as Dobash's study. It is less reliable as a method. It's very difficult to build comparisons because of the unstructured nature of the method. The conversations can't easily be compared or contrasted against one another, so quite difficult to analyze and build comparisons. It does take more time to complete these methods because the nature of building rapport, having a discussion, exploring lots of topics, and some research, particularly Oakley's study, can take, her research took 500 and I think it was 84 hours to complete. So very time consuming. Obviously with that comes additional costs. It also requires quite considerable personal skills of the researcher to be able to answer these questions and probe answers and sort of have a conversation with the sample. Now, semi-structured interviews are a combination of structured and unstructured. They kind of take the best of both. So there are some predetermined questions with opportunities for flexibility in between. As such, it produces quantitative and qualitative data. It can be seen as elements of validity and reliability. So again, not very often you get methods which have both valid and reliable data produced. Obviously, one of the other things about semi-structured interviews is that you can talk about the idea that you can get some verstehen. There's also the reliability, the repeatability of the data. A key study would be Jackson, who conducted semi-structured interviews on lads and ladettes and their attitude towards education and educational failure. Now, semi-structured interviews combine both the strengths and weaknesses of structured and unstructured interviews. So what we can say is it's reliable and it has valid data, but it will require more time to complete, and that obviously requires more financing. It requires additional skills of the researcher to conduct this method, but it does provide both comparable data and abilities to explore topics and sensitive issues. Finally, group interviews as the name suggests, is a group of people coming together to answer questions. Now, this is going to be more like unstructured interviews, that it's qualitative, it helps rapport, there's a lot of validity and verstehen in responses. A good example would be Willis, who held group interviews with the 12 lads, looking at their ambitions of school and education. The key things about group interviews, why they are useful as a research method, is the researcher can observe the group being studied. So they can make direct observations on behaviours along with the information gathered from the interview. It is less time consuming than an unstructured interview. So again, if you're interviewing 12, 13 people, you can do it in one session, get a lot of data, a lot of information, rather than having to go to each individual person and interview them alone. Now, the presence of the researcher is reduced, so researcher characteristics are lower in group interviews because the researcher is there to guide the discussion, but the discussion is often led by the participants. But this does lead to increased social desirability, particularly if there are participants who dominate the discussion or are quite a big personality, and that may discourage others from taking part in the discussion. So, as I say, a very brief overview of the different types of interview and a few strengths and weaknesses of this method. I hope this has helped just to clarify some distinctions between them. And as I say, I will continue to make videos like this. So please like and subscribe, and also tell people about these videos if you have found them useful. Okay, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll be able to speak to you all again soon.